Hello, bonjour, bienvenidos, benvenuti. Welcome to the Music Polyglot channel. So, Amelie by Gracie Abrams. Now today I'm not going to show you how this is played on the record or how the guitarist plays this live because two reasons. One, this is already a pretty hard song to play just because the finger picking is really fast, right? And it has to be quite precise. So that's difficulty number one. Difficulty number two is that it's in an alternate tuning. You have to use a capo. But you know what? I can't find a technical reason why this has to be detuned and it has to be played with a capo. You can play it in standard tuning and you can play it without a capo and you can play the exact same notes that you hear on the record. So that's what we are going to try and do, hopefully making it easier to play. Let's give it a go in a close-up. So this song has one picking pattern. That's the good news. The bad news is that it's slightly tricky. And it has two sections. One chord sequence goes over the intro, verse and choruses, and the other chord sequence goes over the bridge. So let me show you the first chord sequence, the one that goes over intro, verses and choruses. I'll play it for you first up to tempo and I'll slow it down so you can see exactly what's going on. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slow. Slower. Okay, so as you can see on that first chord sequence, we have two chords. Let's talk about the two chords first. Chord number one is a G over B. Chord number two is a type of A7 sus4. Those are the only two chords. Now let's talk about the tricky part, which is the right hand, the picking pattern. On this picking pattern, we're going to be using mainly three fingers, the thumb, the index, and the middle finger. Look, I'm going to play you the picking pattern super slowly on that A7 sus4 chord, just to see whether you can get a sense of what's going on. Now, let me tell you a couple of things you should watch out for. Your index will be glued to the third string and your middle finger will be glued to the second string. Your thumb, however, will be toggling between the fifth string, where the bass note is, and the fourth string. It will be kind of jumping up and down. Check this out. You see how the pattern goes thumb, thumb, right? Thumb on the fifth, then thumb on the fourth. And then you play index, middle. So far you'd have. And then it goes back to the thumb, but on the fourth string to finish. And then the thumb will go back and start the same pattern on the fifth string again. Let's play that again, see if now it makes a bit more sense. So 3 and 4 and thumb, thumb, index, middle thumb, 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 index, middle thumb, 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 index, middle thumb, 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 index, middle thumb. Fourth, fifth, fourth, fifth. Okay. Okay, now the reason why I'm playing this so slowly so many times is just because this is the only pattern throughout the whole song. So it's really important that you get it right. Also because what makes it really difficult is the fact that it's super fast. Right? If we break it down and practice it really slowly to make sure that we have the mechanics right, then it's a lot easier to speed it up. And then once you do that, you can take it over every chord because it's the same pattern throughout and you'll have the whole song. That's why I really suggest you spend some proper time making sure that you memorize and that you have that picking pattern right before you move on. Now I'm going to show you how that pattern works over the first chord, so that G over B chord. The right hand, as you've probably got by now, does exactly the same thing. So this is not going to change at all. It's still going to be going. You see how my right hand, picking hand, doesn't change at all. The only change happens on the left hand where I hammer on that open A string that I play with my thumb to make it but the pattern on my right hand is exactly the same. And I'll play that G over B to A7 sus4 3 times. And on the 4th time we introduce the 3rd chord, which is a G, for which you only really need to take your middle finger down to the G bass note, 3rd fret of the low 6th string. You don't move your ring finger, it stays on the 3rd fret of the B string. And the pattern is the same, except that a tiny little thing to bear in mind. Remember that the thumb plays the bass note, and now the bass note is on the 6th string. So your thumb will be going from the 6th string to the 4th, so skipping the 5th. 6th, 4th, 6th, 4th, 4th, 6th, 4th, 4th. Does that make sense? And we'll keep that G over 2 bars. Okay, so now that hopefully you've practiced that finger picking pattern and that you have it ingrained in your brain, it's time to add one tiny little thing. Think about this next thing that I'm going to tell you as a nice extra thing to have. It's not something that you absolutely must have for the pattern to work, but it's something that kind of happens on the recording and that we should try and emulate if we can. I'll play you the pattern slowly, see if you can spot something different on the A7 sus4 bar. Here we go. I'll play it slowly. See that? Here it goes. One more time. Here it goes. Did you see what happened there? So that A7 sus4, the second time I played my finger picking pattern, my thumb wasn't playing the bass note on its own. I played the ring finger on the high 1st string at the same time. Right, remember that we tuned that 1st string down to a D? So now that means that we can leave that note to ring out, and this is actually the purpose of doing that, right? See how that high D, in this case, rings out over the whole finger picking pattern, giving it a bit more of a sustained quality. And that's the whole purpose of this, right? So that happens at the same time as you play the bass note the second time through the pattern. Let's break that down a tiny bit. So thumb, thumb, index, middle thumb, and then the second time around, thumb and ring finger on the 1st string. And the pattern continues in exactly the same way as before. So thumb, index, middle, thumb. Okay. If you've got the pattern sorted already, then you can think about adding this to it. But, if it makes it a lot more complicated, you don't have to worry about it. This is the pattern that we repeat over the intro, verses, and choruses. Let's have a look at what happens in the bridge. Hey, remember that if you want tabs and sheet music that you can download, you have that on the Patreon page. So check out the link in the description below. So during the bridge, the picking pattern is going to be exactly the same, including that little variation with the ring finger every time, on every chord this time, not just on, the second chord or the third chord, but every single time. So if I play that a little bit slow for you, there go. Okay, so as you can see, there's a bunch of new chords there. Let's go through them one by one. Chord number 1 is an E minor 7. Now, because we've detuned the first string down a tone, we have to compensate that by adding our pinky 2 frets further up from the barre. Right? That's to make it an E minor 7. In the pattern, as we said, same thing as before. Right, with the thumb ring finger variation. Chord number 2 is an A major chord in first inversion. That means we have a C sharp in the bass, and we're going to have that open D that we're actually going to play. The pattern is going to be the same with the thumb ring variation. So okay. Sounds a little bit dissonant, which is actually kind of nice. And it's definitely there on the record, that D on the A major chord as well. Chord number 3, we have a D power chord. Now here, the pattern's a little bit weird, because instead of having thumb, index, middle, right, which would play that B that we don't actually want, we go for the ring instead to have that D. So thumb, index, ring, thumb. We play that twice. And then down to a G, revert back to the original pattern. Back to the E minor 7. An A with the bass in C sharp. And now when we get to this D power chord, we play it the same way we played it before. But then we drop the bass note by a semitone to a C sharp and play the same thing. Okay, so remember that on that D power chord shape, we have that little variation of playing the pattern with the ring finger instead of the middle finger to play that high E string. And lastly, we have a B minor 7, same shape as the E minor 7, but on the second fret, which will repeat the second time before going back to the main pattern again. Okay, so that bridge is considerably harder. If you have the finger picking pattern down, what's going to be hard about this is the chord changes. So you can also practice the chord changes in isolation, just going from one to the other. Make sure that you can play them right. Right, from that B minor 7 to that A with the C sharp in the bass, then D power chord over C sharp, and then the B minor 7. etc., etc., and then slowly plug in the chords to the pattern. So there we have it. I hope that wasn't too tricky. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. Thank you for staying till the end, and I'll see you next time. Hasta la prossima, arrivederci, au revoir.